Welcome everyone to the BOUWHOUSE Symposium. Today is the fourth day and we'll be representing the Urbanism and Landscape track. Today we'll have four speakers talking about their experience after doing the master track. And we'll see how they have experienced their career path. This whole week consists of different tracks, each day represented by another practical association, and it's a collaboration between all the practical associations of the Faculty of Architecture and Stylos. So enjoy, and well, hope to see you at other events as well.
Hello everyone. Today we have this super nice session where we brought together four people who did their masters in urbanism at Theodore and currently working in very different interesting spaces in their careers. We have Alankrita Sarkar, who is a graduate of batch of 2017, and she is currently a researcher and designer at Delta Metropole. And we have Mark here. Mark is a graduate of the batch of 2020, who is a junior urban planner at the Zotomir municipality. Stefano is a graduate of 2020 as well, and he's an urban designer at BouT Max von Strategy and Design at The Hague. And we have Supriya here, who is a graduate of 2017, and she's a doctoral researcher at Theodore's Faculty of Technology, Policy and Management. And it's super nice to have you guys here. You've been through urbanism before, and today we want to see how working in different fields like yourselves is in, and of course, like urbanism, studying urbanism could eventually take you to different parts of the world and different workspaces where you work with the government, you work with think tanks, you work with private practices, and you do that now. So without further ado, I will like to start the discussion. And so what does a day in your life look like? And tell us a bit about how you ended up choosing the profession that you are in now. Maybe we can start with Alankrita.
Hello everyone, I'm Alankrita Sarkar. Ganesh already mentioned that I'm working with Delta Metropolis Association. I'm joining the discussion from Rotterdam. I'm working and staying in Rotterdam, and it's a really weird question to answer right now, what a day looks like during COVID situation, because now it's been almost a year that I'm sitting at home and working from home. But maybe a little bit about the work that I'm doing. So I'm working in the association. It's a Dutch association which was made to advise the government and the private practitioners to think about right strategies, how development can happen. It is more like long-term approaches. We are not implementing the projects, rather we are doing the research and developing the right projects to be implemented. So that's the role of the association. And I'm working now as an international project leader in the office. So my work is more about positioning Netherlands in the European context and to finding the right ways, what can we learn from, where can we learn from to develop Netherlands in a better way. That's the main goal of my work. And also a side goal that I'm very much focusing in from my position at the office is to bridge the gap between academia and practice, because I'm working on a lot of research, but it's not an academic research, it's more practice-oriented research. So how these research which are happening from universities and academia, how that can be changed or modified and actually put into practice. So research with practice is what I'm working on mainly. Now, how my days look like, it's a lot about meetings now, because I'm working on the project development part, and as a project leader, I have to really be in a lot of different meetings. I'm connected with a lot of European cities, metropolitan regions, where I'm discussing that how we can collaborate on different projects, what are the urgencies, how to work together, because as an association, we have a lot of members whom we work with. So there are no projects that we work single-handedly. So we don't produce any research independently just from our side, but we always collaborate with the right partner based on the project and urgency. So it has to do with a lot of meetings. So more or less, I would say that 70% of time in my whole day is going into meetings, and the 30% is my own research and production for those projects. Yeah, that's all for now.
That's super interesting, but it's also interesting to look at the scale that you're working in, right? Like
yeah, so it depends, because I think from all of us would agree with me who graduated from urbanism that it was very flexible during our studies which scale to choose. There were my peers from the university who are working more on the design side. For me, it is more the strategic planning side or the spatial planning side that I'm working in. So the office addresses local scale as well, but particularly for my projects, it's more starting from the city scale, regional scale, more about the cross-border collaboration, transnational scale. So how the edges, the borders of Netherlands are working with west of Germany, Belgium, going towards Paris. So the Euro Delta is one of the main scale that we are working on. And because we are addressing to the European agendas, be it the climate agreement, European Green Deal, this kind of subject, new BOUWHOUSE. So we always look into more European scale, so more cities to work with, be it anywhere from Europe. So I have not gotten outside Europe yet from my research, but this is the scale that I'm working on.
That's super interesting again. And with that being said, I would like to ask the same question to Mark as well. Looking at now, we looked at Alankrita's work, which is at the almost at transnational scale, and Mark is working with the municipality of Zoetermeer. How does a day in your life look like? Of course, beyond these video conferencing thing.
Beyond the COVID situation. Yeah. So that's very recognizable for me, what Alankrita is saying. I've been working in Zoetermeer since September, so half a year almost exactly now. And what a day looks like, yeah, so it's all, my work is all from home at the moment. I would say my work is in about 50-50 meetings and work. The scale of the work compared to Alankrita's is of course a lot smaller, but still it depends very much on the project. Sometimes it's really on a block level, a single project location, a certain type of development, but we also have projects regarding entire neighborhoods, and of course the entire city and also regional scale in the Randstad. So for example, Zoetermeer is a very new town, obviously, so most of the city is built after the Second World War, which means that a lot of neighborhoods are aging right now and are due for renewal. So there's a very big challenge there on neighborhood scale, but also on a city scale. So that's a project I'm working on. One of them is Meerzicht, so that's a 60s, 70s neighborhood, which they're starting to make visions for and strategic planning plans right now. But I also work in the inner city, where sometimes it's just about a single development, housing type of housing developments, setting the parameters, guiding competitions as well. We also, of course, do competitions with offices. So yeah, also it's still quite varied, even though the scale is a lot smaller.
That's again interesting to hear. But so if you said that you at the municipality work on strategic planning and other things as well, but does that mean you guys develop the entire thing, or is it stop at a certain point where the government says this is what we do, and then beyond that, a different agency would take over?
Depends a bit on the project. Sometimes if we don't have the capacity in terms of people or financially, then sometimes it's done by offices or companies, and they take over. But also sometimes we do studies ourselves. So it really depends on the project. Can be both. So that's also nice. Sometimes you really have the freedom to design, sketch, but at the same time, sometimes you just set the parameters, see what people design, and then see where you can tweak the product, let's say. So it really depends. Yeah.
Okay, that's nice to hear. And with that being said, I'm going to make the transition to Stefano, who is working with a design agency, so strategy and design company. So Stefano, tell us about how your work looks like.
Yeah, hi everyone. I think it's interesting to mention first that we partner often with Vereniging Dental Metropole, and we work often on the same assignment for the same client, but then we work together as a partner team. That's an interesting perspective. And while Mark and the municipalities are more often the clients for us, I would say that 70% of our clients are public institutes, and then the other 30% is other civic associations or private developers. Concerning my work, in our office, our project range from more concrete and, let's say, architectural urban design projects to more strategic and regional plans. We have 3 teams that specialize in 3 different these 3 different areas. One is, again, the urban design, one is more master planning, and one is more regional strategy. I'm part of the regional strategy team, which means that we either work on cross-border tasks as something similar as Alankrita mentioned, but then not on the Euro-Delta scale, but then more on specific cross-border regions. For example, now I'm working on the North Sea Port District at the border between Netherlands and Belgium. There's a port that is cross-border, and they asked us to provide a regional image to the development of the port, a cross-border regional image. But another interesting type of projects that we do are more linked to something that you can see maybe in the urban agenda by the UN, so that they are strategies that are very small scale, maybe even at a block scale, but that they are abstract enough to be applied to any city across the Netherlands. So maybe they're very small scale strategies, but then again, as I said, they're abstract enough to be adjusted to the specific local context. Also connecting to one thing that Mark said, and one question you asked to Mark, Ganesh, is that often we work also as a link between different levels of political hierarchies. For example, we've been working with the municipality of Amsterdam to promote the extension of a metro line. And in that case, our work was mostly, we needed to help the municipality of Amsterdam to, let's say, sell the project to the ministries, to the national government, in order to get funding and get more municipalities and the region involved. So I think it's also interesting to see our work as this office that provides an expertise both on storytelling, but also on more project-related tasks that can help the communication between different parties. While regarding my typical day at work, I would say that I'm also 50-50 between meetings and production time. Although it started as a 90% production and 10% meeting at first. I started with an internship with the company, and now I'm learning how to be a project leader. I am an urban designer officially, but now I'm acting as a junior project leader in one specific project, so that the meeting percentage time is increasing by the day.
That's interesting that it's not only the design that you work on, but also like creating narratives and stories around how the project can be, taken to the world as well. And yeah. Speaking of that, Supriya is doing interesting research that is like globally relevant as well. It's here now we are looking at scales that sort of transcend countries, and we're looking at issues that is that concerns everyone. So, Supriya, tell us a bit about your research and tell us how your day looks like.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, Ganesh, Nick, Laila, and nice to be here. Alankrita and I also graduated from the same year. We used to both be in Polis, so it's a nice reunion. Uh, yeah, so I think I've worked in an office or before I started my PhD. So I think what I would characterize a PhD as is to be a project leader of your PhD project in terms of how you a day would look like. So my research area is looking at long-term urban planning under climate change. So that's the broad area. So I look at two case studies, one Dutch case study, which is Amsterdam, and an Asian case study, increasing complexity, which is Mumbai. So the geographies are very different. So the kind of tasks that come with it and the design sensibilities that need to come with it also are different. My research is positioned at TPM, so I would presume everyone knows the faculty. It's under the Resilience Lab, the newly formed Resilience Lab at TPM. So as compared to urbanism, I think TPM really is policy and a lot of quantitative and qualitative studies that are associated with research. So my research kind of blends a little bit of, well, not little bit, I would say it's 50-50 design and the modeling / policy research aspects. So and I'm in the well, I just finished the second year of the PhD. So it's a huge learning curve because in office you're used to do skill sets that you're actually good at. And when I started doing the PhD, it was really like learning a lot new things that are very uncomfortable for me. Coding, programming. I don't think I'm still very good at all of it, but I had to learn it because that's how you kind of find more interesting ways of applying spatial research, integrate climate variables, etc., and build something out of it. So that's what I do. On a day-to-day basis, my tasks, some days 100% meetings. Like I start meetings at 9 and I work till 6, 7. It's only in front of a computer talking. But the tasks, there's some days that are just research. There's no meetings and I'm just, by research, I would say it's a combination of all kinds of things, desk research. I do a lot of interviews with practitioners. I supervise master's students. So as an advanced PhD student now, not in the first year, but as a second, third year PhD, I supervise now 1 or 2 master's students. I am a teaching assistant. So my week kind of gets filled with different kinds of work. So like, yeah, there's a couple of hours for teaching, couple of hours for supervision, couple of hours for research. Then I try to consult on a course that's being developed, and then try to also do my own research in the gaps that are available. So that's the task range, I would say. Yeah, that's more or less what my weeks look like. I would not say days. Weekly plans are better. Yeah.
That's nice. Again, like you said in the beginning, like it's more like being a project leader for your own project.
Yeah. So I set the agent. As a PhD, you're responsible for setting what you want to do, how much you want to do, in consultation with your supervisors. Of course, they could also say that you're not doing enough or you're doing not in the right path. So all my meetings are set because I decided it, unless they're like lab meetings or administration meetings. So you really decide what direction you want to take your research. And that's an advantage and a disadvantage of being independent researcher, because it can put a lot of pressure on you to take the lead on everything. So
Yeah, super nice. But you also mentioned that you were working with a different faculty at this point now, and I'm just wondering, like, how did the education that you had at studying urbanism at Theodore, how did that sort of help you towards your PhD and the kind of research focus that you're having at this point of time?
Oh, extremely relevant. And I think I had a gap where after when I graduated, I went back to work almost immediately to India. So I was working with a government research project on infrastructure resilience for about 18 months. And I was working on the PhD proposal through that year. So I think one of the reasons I was hired for this PhD position was because I came from an urbanism, spatial planning background. So they wanted somebody who could bring in this qualitative design perspective and understand how they could combine it with more qualitative policy modeling methods. So if planners like make structure visions for 2040 or 2050, how can models help in kind of making that, giving it more evidence, stretching that boundary further on how much further you can look into the future. So they wanted somebody who could be open to bringing their planning skills and also learn some modeling methods to kind of push this research forward, and how can we really plan future cities and build methods towards changing the perception to how our master plans should work. So I think it kind of snowballed very well, though I have to say at the moment it is a lot of desk research. So I'm not designing actively. I'm supposed to do that in year 3, but the first 2 years were a lot of analysis, really, like by analysis I really mean like quantitative and qualitative data, interviews, writing, literature reviews, etc. So it is a shift, but that's the nature of research at TPM, so I was open to it. So yeah, so interesting. Yeah.
So would it be right if I say that you picked up a set of core skills and attitudes that sort of help towards your PhD as well in the urbanism course? Or
I would say the hard skills, you have to be open to learning in a PhD. So even if you do it just at the Faculty of Urbanism itself, that's the whole point. If you want to push research forward, you have to be open to learning new skills, even though they might just be in the area that you're in. So that's the whole idea of a PhD. It's not that much as much application, it's more ideation. So there is a lot of failing because not everything that you try succeeds, though there are deadlines for everything. So if I'm working on a paper which needs a round of analysis, there is, in a PhD, you try to try something new. So there is also the fear, the possibility that this is not going to work, and you have to be open to that. So, and I think that's true for any PhD, even if you do it at urbanism or if you do it someplace else. So you have to keep an open mind, and you have to be very perseverant, like have a lot of patience. If you fail, you have to keep trying. If you get disheartened, um, yeah, that's probably that's then the PhD is probably not a good fit for somebody who wants faster results, because you get no fast results in a PhD. It's very slow. So yeah.
thank you, Supriya. Stefano, how would you say that? I mean, working at a practice is the most direct kind of a transition that I can think of from studying at urbanism towards working at a practice is feels natural to me. But how do you think, like, what what sort of things that you learned at school that's like helping you at work today?
Yes, I agree with you that the, let's say, the quarter structure, also the first year of master in TU Delft, is a very similar pace than the one that I have in the office. So it's very relatively quick projects that maybe they're spread over a longer period of time, but then you only work a few hours a week on them. So it's a relatively fast pace of research analysis and then the final products. Although it's also important to mention that we also have research, like research and development within the office, which works on a more longer term basis, and that's more about office and personal development. So researching themes that are dear to us, that we believe have potential for the future, and that's a more, as I said, long term perspective in the, let's say, pace of work. Regarding the skills, I would say that the education at TU Delft definitely taught me a lot for the hard skills relating to design, analysis, and research. All of them, I would say that the quality that we conducted them in the master is pretty similar to the quality in the office. There are some, of course, some adjustment regarding efficiency. In the office, there's much more pressure on time constraints and deadlines, and again, efficiency, making stuff right at the first try. But then, of course, you're also in an office environment, which means that there's a collective knowledge that you can use as a feed for your project. So that helps, of course. It's not just upon the individual the responsibility to be more time efficient. Although I think that there is one relatively large gap in the urbanism education, which I only realized recently in my office, and that is we didn't really develop more soft skills of project leading and project management and more entrepreneurial type of skills, which is something that, especially in the last month and last 2 months in which I started being a junior project leader, I really felt a sort of lack from my side in this sort of skills, which I then had to develop myself. And of course, I have the help of my colleagues. I have a mentor, a senior colleague in the office that is working as a shadow project leader for me, for helping me whatever I cannot do. But there are many things that we really never even touched during the master, which I think is a pity, because I think that the innovation and the focus on innovation and the let's say the content of the master study in TU Delft in urbanism is very innovative, and both in public and private and civic sectors, in the professional environment, they are not as innovative as the content that you find in the master in TU Delft. And that means that you do need entrepreneurial skills, because you do need to convince people that what you're saying is not only researched and let's say reasonable on a more scientific perspective, but is also let's say there's also a sort of selling skill to it that we never really learned in university. So I would say hard skills very good, soft skills could be better.
That's I mean, like, soft skills are something that we don't get trained systematically, but something that maybe we pick up because of the kind of international structure that we are in, but that's I mean, I can agree with you. That's a little bit difficult at these trying times as well, with studying from home and all that. That's a interesting perspective.
Just as a final comment, because during university I used to think that, yeah, also as you said, soft skills, you just learn them by doing. So you're put in a project leader position, and then you learn because you have to. But actually, within the office, we started doing some trainings for junior project leaders, which are more structured and by persons who actually had an education on project management. And then I realized that it's actually possible to educate people on project leading. It's possible to teach soft skills even in a more formal way, let's say, as you teach hard skills. So that also opened a bit my perspective.
That's that's so. How does Mark and Alankrita find this? Because you said you're spending a lot of time engaging with people and
no, I think if I before I get into my learnings from university, I just to as a point what Stefano mentioned about the soft skills part, somehow I agree that it's not something that is being taught in the university. I'm not sure if it is just with TU Delft, but I can expect this could be for all other universities as well, quite possible. But at the same time, maybe Supriya will agree with me on this. While working on Polis or talking to maybe as a research project, connecting with a research project which is happening in the university. So I was connected with one of the ESPON research project which was going on separately, working on Polis as one of the PR side of it or board member of it. I think these helps you to at least start practicing your skills before you get into the real practice. So maybe that could be something you can take these 2 years time to try and test what works for you, and you learn while doing it already. So that could be something which is helpful, I think. And I think, Ganesh, you are also there, and Nick and Laila, I think you guys are already working on some other things like that, like Polis and associations.
Coincidentally, all the guests here were members of Polis as well.
Yes.
So
I think we are all very committed to Polis.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one thing about the soft skills. But from my learning from college, I have to say that my work right now somehow is in between what Supriya discussed and what Stefano mentioned, because as an association, we don't get direct projects from clients that this is what you have to work on. We have to develop our own projects. So in a way, there is no indication from the client or boss or other project leaders that this is what you have to work on. Rather, we try and find the gaps and try to develop the projects there. So it's a bit of individual process. As Supriya is developing her PhD, that you have to develop your own research and then see how the project can be done, how it can be financed, which are the right partners for it. And from the university, this helped me in two ways, this kind of process. One was like, this is other than the hard skills that we all have learned. One was that Theodore, I think at the beginning, which I struggled as well during first 2 quarters, that it's very flexible. You are open to too many choices of scales, too many choices of way of working. And in a way, that's a learning that I had during those 2 years, which was easier for me to, start with nothing, start from a blank paper where there is no project coming to you rather than you creating a project. So I think this learning was a very important one for me personally while in my work. And the second one, it of course helped me to select the right scale of choice, because it was easier for me from all 4 quarters first year to see and work on different scales of urbanism. And it was by next year, I could already see myself talking more about the planning and policy side of it rather than the design side of it. So I think it was a big advantage for me that I could select that during my studies, and accordingly I tried applying for the right offices further. So yeah, these are the learnings I would say for me.
It's I mean, for adding on to what you said, it's quite a unique setup in TDLF, I guess, in terms of the kind of scales that we work at. Generally, when I'm from India, and in India, urban planning or urban design generally stops at the scale of the city and maybe to a little bit of regional scale. But in TDLF, I've been looking at projects that are territorial, like looking at the whole of Amazon or entire river basins together, and that sort of imagination is super interesting. And that doesn't stop at work. Stop at college is what I'm getting to know from your work as well. So
yeah. No, that's definitely, I think that's very true. And even after working for more than 3 years now at the association, I still feel that every day I'm learning something new. That's because coming from the Indian background, it was difficult at the beginning to understand that how there so much cooperation can actually happen. It's very open-ended work here. As Stefano mentioned, that we work very closely, like they are one of his office's members, same as Zotomir from Mark. We are most of the municipalities are members of the Delta Metropolis Association. So none of the work that we are doing we are just putting our statements out. It's always in collaboration with the right designer, in collaboration with the right context of like municipality, metropolitan region, or a provincial scale. So that's something to really learn from Netherlands. I would say it's a big learning process for me till date, which I'm very happy to learn from, because this could be beneficial for any country. Not all the countries are open for it yet, but that's something to learn from here.
Yeah, that's the working culture is another fascinating topic as well. But before I move to Mark, there maybe one of you could comment on if there is a lot of these collaborations. Does language act as a barrier, or is it more flexible? Because I also see that some of you are not from the Netherlands. So.
It does. It definitely does. There are certain restrictions, because if I'm talking about the policies of Netherlands, I have to understand the language to at least read the policies, or at least to be in the right debates or right discussions when I'm talking about Netherlands. Luckily, it worked out for me because my position was more for the international positioning. So I'm dealing with more clients outside Netherlands are more from Europe, so I have to use English as a common language. But at the same time, if you look at growth, it is very much needed to learn Dutch. And I think more than me, if more than my particular position as international project leader, if it was something within Netherlands, because other project leaders are working within Netherlands, for them it's essential. So it was essential from day one. For me, I'm still taking 3 years time to learn the language and try and test it. But yeah, for other officers, I'm sure it's very much relevant to have the language skills.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Mark, tell us about how studying at Theodore helped in your work with the government.
Well, I think I very much agree with Stefano on the learnings. So there's a lot of hard skills. Also, although of course a lot of software use and stuff you also learn by yourself by doing it. So I mean, we don't really get structured courses in that as well, but the focus is so much on those programs that you really learn them anyway. So it doesn't really matter. I really enjoyed, for example, the thesis, because that was also kind of like running your own business, running your own project. Managing your own time, like Supriya said, if you have a meeting with your supervisors, it's because I wanted it. You decide what research to do, how to set up the project, what to design. So I really enjoyed that part. But I also agree with Stefano that it's different from the practice, because you're running the project entirely by yourself and you don't have to have anything to do with anyone else. So you make all the decisions yourself, and you don't have to agree with no one has to agree with you. You can just make your own plan. So and in practice that of course never works this way, because you're always talking with all kinds of parties. So designers working for you as a municipality, but also housing cooperatives, inhabitants, of course, in neighborhoods, provinces, other types of public institutions. So in that sense, it's very different from running your own thesis project. And it is important to work together and have those soft skills, communication, persuading people that something is a good idea. Yeah, so generally, I think the program, the Urbanism program, is a very good program, and very diverse. It has all the skills, and you really get to know what suits you best. So I also find out like there's so many different types of urbanists. I mean, you can research, you can design, you can plan, you can do large scale, small scale. You can go very much into one theme as well. So there's a lot to choose from. And what I like at the municipality is that all those things really, they come together. So you work on a lot of projects at the same time, but slower. So I think compared to Stefano, you work more projects, but they go slower. So it's more multitasking as well. Sometimes it's a project stops for a month, a year, who knows. But all kind of other projects start. So it's very diverse. So that's what I like about it.
Yeah. So I mean, of course, there are things that you take from the course, and then there are things that you learn in the job, like all of you mentioned. If you were to like advise or like give a few tips to someone who is looking to take a similar career path as yourself, to be a part of the government in the case of Mark, then what would be some recommendations or tips that you would give towards a student who wants to take this sort of career path?
Well, try to figure out what you want, of course. So do you want to design only? Do you want to do a lot of different types of work on different skills? Those are questions I think you need to try to answer when you do the urbanism program, and then decide, okay, do I want to work for the government, work for an office, do research, those kind of things. And then of course, if you want to work for the government, then if you don't speak Dutch, the opportunities are very limited. I think there's a couple of larger municipalities like Rotterdam, they sometimes hire English speaking, but most of the time it's a requirement. So, and in offices, of course, it depends. Some offices work English, some work Dutch only. So that's a challenge. Yeah, and yeah, try to figure out what you want and go for it. That's what I would do. Like, don't be scared to send open applications to companies if you really like their work. Also, be realistic. Don't expect the first job interview to get the job, but just keep trying.
All right. Stefano, would you like to add a few words to that?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Mark said, of course. That's very important. Another thing that I would add to that is that you should not see choosing a job as sort of stepping into a different world. Especially, I guess maybe it's more, it's also linked to the Dutch working culture at least in the field of urban planning. But in general, I think it's very good to keep the attitude of personal development and learning even after you graduate. And that's, I personally got the feeling immediately after graduation that my opportunities were closed somehow. So I was employed and I got my contract, and then I can just work and spend my days like that. But then you realize that there's actually much more to that. It's not just a job that you do every week, but you should be able to find your own development and learning opportunities within whatever job you're doing. And that's something also that you can propose to your own employer, for example, if they don't offer you directly. And I think that's very important. We should. I feel sometimes we are stuck into this mindset that work is like a duty. It is not. It's it should be fun, of course, but it should enrich you in ways that it should make you grow as a person even after the official learning education finishes. That's the main thing.
Yeah, like you mentioned before, it's I think it's about being entrepreneurial as well. Like
Yeah.
to be a person who is improving yourself as well. That definitely helps. I think. Yeah, that's nice. So Priya, if you were to tell someone who wants to do a PhD after urbanism, what do they do? How do they do that?
So in terms of procedurally applying for one, I think you need to keep an eye open for grants or positions. So sometimes there are positions in your department. You can keep an eye for positions that open up in complementary departments like civil engineering, water management, or TPM now is doing a lot of work on the built environment. I started by applying for an NWO grant for young researchers, which was actually to think about it, it wasn't planned in my case. It just came through someone who in fact I was back in the Netherlands packing off to go back to India, like for good. That's when someone sent me that there was an open call for proposals, and that's how I started. And the NWO processes are fairly long, so you need to make sure that you have something to do, like a job, which I did when you start applying, because it could take anywhere from 6 to 8 months or more than that to actually begin the PhD, because there's several rounds of proposal writing, interviews. So that's the longer route. The shorter route is that, you have a professor who has an open position who offers you and you compete for it, which is also a plausible scenario, but happens less because, in either case, I think from generally the idea of doing a PhD, it's good to know firstly what area you like to research on, because I don't think it's like working in an office. The office has a lot of interesting projects, but when you actually go in, they give you the least interesting work to do, or they put you on you were like, oh my god, like this XYZ really great architecture firm does so many cool buildings, but when I went there, they gave me like a random residential neighborhood, and I'm not even interested in doing it, which is quite possible also in a PhD, because you could go in with something cool, but the reality could be slightly different. So you have to kind of manipulate your way through it. So So that's one. So as long as you have your big idea, like I want to research on circular economy at this scale or climate adaptation on a scale, then you kind of snowball things around it. I think there's no fixed PhD because it's always a collaboration between you. If you have a research group, I don't, and your supervisors, and they could, my supervisors are from different domains completely, not from spatial planning. So there's also that. One is from actually mathematics and one is from urban planning, but really technical water engineering domain. So you also have to kind of find a topic where everyone contributes to your big project. So that's that's your wayfinding for a PhD, I would say. Um, in the European context, of course, your funding is more secure. You do, if they hire you, they try to give you funding for 4 years, more or less. Not UK, but in the European Union. So that's a good, it's an advantage, because if you go to the US and some other countries, I'm not quite sure. The funding is not always assured. You start with a year and then you have to write grants with your supervisors for the next round of funding, and that's always constantly you're on the edge about. It's like having a yearly contract. In the European, in the Dutch system, they give you a 4-year contract, and they can throw you out obviously if you do a very bad job, but at least the contract doesn't say that. Let's put it that way. So they can absolutely throw you out. It's not like they cannot. I've also seen that happen. So who candidates who, not because they were bad, just because it wasn't a match, the research was not heading in the right direction, who were asked to leave. But uncommon, but I have seen it in the year that I was here. But that's an advantage of the PhD. You get a slightly more secure contract, at least in the Netherlands. So you get a permit that's long, especially from an international perspective. I think that's very important that you get this kind of security to stay, and that's your full-time job. You're not a student anymore. You're an employee of the university. So that is really your 40-hour job. You're paid for 40 hours. Let me put it that way. So you are committed to that job. You can't do 10 other things that also pay you a salary. No, this is a full-time thing that you commit to. You pay taxes like a regular employed person. So yeah, that's the kind of security that it offers. But there are also cons to it. So you have to be able to find your fit, because otherwise it's very precarious, because it's very easy to get frustrated also, because you think you want to start something and it doesn't go that way. Then that's a problem, because then you invest a longer period of your life into it, unlike a job where you do a project and then you can put it on your CV. If you discontinue a PhD, what are you going to put? You did 1 year of a PhD and then left. you, but I have also seen that happen. It's not uncommon. It also happens because sometimes you realize through the PhD that, hey, I'm not happy, I'm depressed, or but yeah, exactly. So it's a long-term investment. So you have to get into the mindset of really giving it as much as you can for those 4 years. So that's more or less what I would say from a mindset point of view. This is what you should enter a PhD with, that you want to hang in there for a long time and not, yeah, come out of it. Yeah. I'm happy to take any follow-up questions though. Yeah.
No, but it's nice to hear that that system has this more of a systematic and a stable research environment.
Yeah, it's like a stable job basically. So, but of course nobody counts your hours. So I'm working 60, 70 or more a week, but I'm paid for 40. So so that's a whole different issue. So I cannot stop work at 5 p.m. But however, I don't even have to start work at 9 a.m. unless I have meetings. But that's every day of my life. I have meetings from 9 a.m., but that's just my project. But as a PhD researcher, you're very flexible. If you don't have meetings, you can choose to start work at 1, end at 10 p.m. at night, if you like working at night. That is, you're not bound necessarily by the office hour thing. But as I said, so for some people that does not work out. You want structure in your life. So and a PhD can kind of bring out the best and the worst in your personality and how you work. So that's something to be mindful of. But anyway, that's part of the process.
It's not for everyone. It's for a certain kind of.
I don't know. It's an acquired skill, I think. I don't think that I would not scare anyone off, because I don't think it's any more difficult or easy than going to an office job. It's almost like that, and the whole interpersonal skill debate that we just discussed from Mark and Stefano and Alankrita, it's you have to have very high interpersonal soft skills for a PhD, because you are convincing, not just you're convincing yourself, you're convincing your supervisors, and you're convincing the rest of the world. Look at why my research is supposed to be done. Give me money, respond to my emails. So it's very, very important skill. And I think being part of organizations in Urbanism, Polis, whatever you can do, magazine, organize a talk, attend more, and the group is so diverse that you can just by talking or attending stuff you can learn a lot. And I think that's one of my takeaways from the degree, are not so much the hard skills, but I think in terms of my soft skills, I really think it helped me tremendously from when I started. I was not an introvert by any mean. I was always outspoken, but the curve that I had in the 2 years during the masters in terms of being able to talk to different types of people, culture, how do you interact with a Dutch person, Indian person, Chinese person, not to stereotype anything, but generally, I think it's helped me a lot when I'm doing my PhD now. It's because I have to speak to very diverse stakeholders, chief resilience officers, landscape architects, policy people, engineering people who don't want to talk to you. So that's been a good takeaway for the PhD as well, I think. So yeah, I would say it's an acquired skill. Everyone can push their way through it, but yeah, it's whether you want to commit that much of your life to it. That's what I said. When you go into it, it's a longer term plan for your life. And in a job, it may not necessarily be that way. You can still change things if you're bored. So, you know.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ganesh, can I quickly add something into it?
Yeah.
I think it's really good for, I don't know if it is very much clear for the audience or not, but I think it's a really good group of people who are talking today, because it shows the variety, at the same time the linkages between us. There are my work, I can really link it with Stefano, Mark, Supriya, all three of you. So it's really a good group, I think, which is speaking and trying to let everybody our life and our lifestyle. So I think one really good thing that Supriya mentioned, that as a PhD, she can start her work at 1 and end at 10. It's very flexible. That's something even I have in my office. And I appreciate it very much. I don't know, as she also mentioned, that it can go wrong if people are very structured minded, that no, I just want to work from 9 to 5. But at architectural offices, design offices in our sector overall, it's very difficult to stop at 5. So I think people should not have that expectation or restricting themselves before they actually apply for, be it a PhD or an office or any kind of work in our sector, that we can really stop our work at 5, start at 9. It doesn't work like that for any of the offices I can imagine. So it's good to have that flexibility in hand, so that you can plan yourself, plan your work, and planning not just in terms of spatial planning, but planning your time in our sector is also very important, because we don't have a defined output all the time. It's not a mathematics solution where we can get one answer and we are done with it. Even with one answer that we are getting after working for 2 months on it, it's very possible that it doesn't work out and we have to change. So that acceptance should be there. And that's something I think that was also a learning from TU Delft, that you work for short term, but at the same time, always have a plan B approach. If this doesn't work out, what would work out? Always work on scenarios, always, not just in terms of your project work, but in terms of practical side of it as well. While applying for offices, always have a plan B in mind. Don't be so restrictive towards your offices or towards your work that, no, I just want to be working in here and nothing else. It's good that what Mark was mentioning about the scale, the choice of scale should be there during your masters or after your masters, so that you know that which scale you prefer to work on, what type of work. But really, it's not a good recommendation to restrict yourself in terms of type of offices or things like that, because you can see there are really a lot of relation between all 4 of us, even coming from different backgrounds of offices. So I think people should keep that in mind, that rather than restricting yourself, just do open applications. It's quite possible that it works out differently in an interview. You can actually convince them to put you in a new position which is already not there. So just go ahead with it.
This, I'm enjoying this conversation. It's super informative as well. I'm also wondering, like, in terms of, there was also a question from the audience as well. Generally, like in architecture, there is a training track, and then you register yourself as an architect, right? And even in the Netherlands, there is a certain registration for being an urban designer as well. So do you have any insight on that? And does your work right now is taking you in that direction, or how does that work? What one of you can answer?
For me, I know that there is a training track for urbanism where you get your title. Personally, it did not. I did not find in last 3 years time, 3.5 years time, while working in Netherlands, that it's a mandatory thing, or it like till now I did not feel anywhere that because of that or not having that, I don't have that. So because of not having that, there are any downsides of it for my career. I did not feel it that way. But if you ask me personally, it is always nice to have a registration number like that. So it's an advantage, but I did not, I was not never in a situation where it was a problem for me not to have it.
I think it also depends on what you plan to do. So if you, for example, don't plan to stay working in the Netherlands, then of course it doesn't really matter if you get a title here. Yeah. For me, how it works is that, for example, in Zoetermeer, that I can start with this project, this track after summer, and then they pay part of it, I pay part of it, and part of it I do during work hours, and part of it I do in my own time. So they do support you in following the track, and they also kind of want me to get it in order to, how do you say, really get the experience. So they also told me, like, if you want to grow in your career, and especially then in public sectors, I don't know, in private sector, it's not that grounded right now as it is in architecture, for example. I think in architecture, it's really sometimes a requirement. And for urbanism, it's not really. Maybe it will change in the future. I don't know. Maybe it will never be a very strong requirement. In job listings, they pretty much never ask for a registration, but on the long term, that it might change, and then it could be handy. I think generally it's a good experience, of course, to do it, but it's also a financial and motivation aspect is there as well. If you want to do it, if you want to pay for it, if you are supported by your company or your employer to do it. So the opportunity is there, but I think it also depends a bit on your own situation, whether or not you want to do it. And if you want to work really more on a very large scale, or if you're more into research, you might not need it also in that sense. So it really depends person by person, I think, whether or not it's a good idea.
Right. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And this was like a super enlightening experience for me. I hope it was for everyone else who joined us though. Yeah, and thanks again for joining. Maybe Ila has a few words to add towards the end.
Yes. Thank you. Sorry, everyone. Thank you for the wonderful presentation and discussion that took place. Also, everyone, thank you for joining, and especially the speakers and Polis, of course. We have a workshop at 2 o'clock. If you're interested in joining, you can send us an email. The email is chairman@stylos.nl, and then you can join the workshop at 2 o'clock. We'll continue this interesting discussion there as well. And we hope to see you tomorrow at the last lecture of the week, and otherwise at the closing drinks at 5 o'clock tomorrow.